A very good evening to you. I just wonder, have we entered a whole new era of politics in South Africa?
This is a major reconfiguration of South African political landscape because for the very first time, a system that has always been dominated by one party, the ANC, is now profoundly shaken, and the ruling party looks vulnerable with only just less than 4% majority holding. If this was a national or provincial election, then Gauteng, which is the industrial hub, producing 40% plus of the GDP of the country, is largely controlled by the opposition. Same in the Eastern Cape, the industrial hub of Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, where you have the auto industry and the related industries, is now under the leadership of the opposition. The Western Cape, it used to be said that has a different demography, but that argument doesn't hold now because this has spread to other regions, and it is typical of post-liberation, African states, where ruling parties hold on to the majority by holding to the rural areas and the peripheral, peri-urban areas. But in the South African situation, though, the country is heavily urbanized, therefore losing urban areas could be one step towards losing power.
All right, so you mentioned the Western Cape, and that's where we kind of first saw the idea of coalitions being formed. But we have entered a new space now where the kingmaker, inverted commas, has decided not to formally join any coalition, but says they'll pledge support, but it does seem it's when it suits them. Let's talk then about this new era of minority governments. What do they mean, and how will it translate practically?
Well, it simply means that EFF will support the DA and work with the other opposition parties in voting for these minority municipal governments. Therefore, DA will be in place in many of these major areas such as Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, and maybe it might even be in power in Johannesburg Metro. But when it comes to issues such as budget and other programs, you will have a situation where now these minority governments will be most vulnerable because EFF and the ANC in the opposition may contest each and every other item, and sometimes if this is not well handled, it may paralyze the operations of these big metros and in turn may paralyze the very economy of the country at the most fragile time when it is hoping for recovery.
If we do experience that kind of paralysis, what then?
If any municipal government proved to be dysfunctional, then you would have provincial government MEC intervening by imposing an administrator. But in this political environment, it may prove to be very difficult to even bring an administrator who will be effective in bringing together all the role players. Therefore, one would hope that this arrangement, fragile as it is, will work, and as such that the opposition parties in a pragmatic fashion may work very hard now that they are in position of governance to prove that they can actually do what they promised, and therefore people ultimately would benefit from effective service delivery.
Tell us about the EFF, your thoughts about the choice that they have taken not to form coalitions with anybody and pledge their support for the DA. What does that mean for the party itself?
Well, the party, it looks like it has a long-term view. They didn't want their brand to be tainted because they still have ambitions of being seen as this revolutionary party that will transform the landscape. They still have ambitions of becoming the major party in 2019 and beyond. And if they had gone in with the ANC, then many voters would say, what was all this energy and attack on the ANC corruption and leadership all about? If they had gone in with the DA, then they would actually be seen as having betrayed their cause and even face the threat of being swallowed, as the ID and other small players who were very close to the DA had experienced in the past.
So the ANC is not a small party in all of these metros. Will their influence still be felt if these smaller parties and the DA stick together?
I think their influence will be felt if they work smart and they work effectively, and also if they become constructive in areas where they think it would benefit people, because this will place them in a positive light in the face of the voters. But in the Western Cape, ANC in opposition hasn't done well. Therefore, in other places, they will have to produce something special. But all that will emanate from ANC having introspected critically and honestly. But if that doesn't happen, unfortunately, it might be on a progressive decline.
We've just seen the South African Communist Party talking very tough about the ANC, and I'm just wondering the fate of the tripartite alliance as a result of this announcements today.
It will put a great strain, because you may have a blame game, and as such you may have even worst case scenario where the president may decide to retaliate by having a major overhaul of the cabinet, punishing those who may be critical of him, particularly those from the tripartite alliance and the SACP specifically. If that happens, then it may make for a very messy situation for ANC leading to its leadership succession next year, just like that same situation may translate into brutal wars in 2018 during the provincial conferences, and the same for the list processes. And that may not give the ANC space and time to recover, and that might just be the final blow if it doesn't take care of this situation.
All right, let's just take a look at the metros that are still outstanding. I think Ekurhuleni really is about maths and whether the AIC might be convinced or not. But Johannesburg is a little bit more complex. What do you see playing out in the next couple of days in Joburg?
Well, I still believe that in Joburg you do have a situation where DA working together with the opposition parties, when they come together, they may have more numbers, and you may even have a situation where Herman Mashaba may just decide and be politely persuaded privately to walk away, as long as it doesn't look like the DA has pushed him away. And as such, EFF then would throw their lot with the DA. And if that is not the case, ANC may try to pull in some of the small parties, but the challenge here is that the arrangement that you saw being led by the DA in Sandton today had brought together all the opposition parties to say, let's work together across the country, which means they are less inclined to work with the ANC in Johannesburg.
All right, that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your analysis, Dr. Somadoda Fikeni, who's in Pretoria this evening. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and after that,